and welcome to another episode of The Influential Nonprofit. Today I'm making friends all over the world because every week I make new best friends on this podcast, and I'm making new friends all over the world today. And I'm very excited to talk to. I have two guests today, Andrea and Haril. Okay, I'm going to say it right. Kazindra. I've got it now. It's like Kazindra. And you're co-founders of Musana, an organization that is transforming communities in Uganda. And we're going to get all into this today and the very unique way that you have structured your organization. We're going to talk about why. I'm very excited. So thank you for coming and sharing your time and your day with me.
Yeah, thank you for having us,
Yeah,
Mariana.
it's good to be
Okay.
here.
If you listen to this, I always start with the same question. So you guys can answer this collectively, individually, but I always want to know, tell me something you're proud of that you don't get to brag about a lot. So it's just something in your life that you're proud of, but it may not be well known to others, or you just don't talk about it a lot.
Kind of. Um, got anything?
There's nothing you're proud of at all.
No, I have a lot of things, but I'm like, what would someone not know?
Yeah,
Or maybe you
first,
just don't get to brag about it a lot.
first of all, I think it's a very good question, and I don't think I brag about Andrea enough, but I'm so proud of her. I feel she's a gift in many ways, but I'm really so proud about our team in Uganda that is executing the work on the ground most of the time. And we don't brag enough about them, but they're the people in the trenches and the forefront, making direct impact to the communities. So it's one of the things that I don't feel we put enough light on them, shine a good light on them, but I'm so proud of what they do.
Yeah, there you go. All right.
I would say we just had a documentary made about Musana, and it's not even like really public yet, but it's been winning some awards in different film festivals, and we haven't gotten to brag about it yet because it's like still so new, but it's really exciting to
They
see the
made a documentary about your organization. Who
yeah.
did? Who made a documentary?
Um, a, a filmmaker that loved our story. He came out and got a team together and they made a really, really powerful documentary. It's called Finding Musana. And we haven't like really pushed it or marketed it here in the US yet because it's just still so new, but it's been getting into a bunch of film festivals and doing really well in them. So
That's amazing.
oh, it's exciting.
That is incredible. Wow. Okay. So, obviously your story was riveting enough, interesting enough to create a documentary. So tell me about Musana. Like why did you start it? Because I'm sure like when you were kids, you didn't wake up and be like, I'm gonna start a nonprofit when I grow up. No one does.
Yeah, our story is unique, I would say, and how it was founded. I grew up in Colorado and was a business student studying business at the lead school business. And, I had always grown up really wanting to help people. I grew up in a Christian home and was always told to be the hands and feet of Jesus. And didn't really understand how I could do that with business. And so got excited about this concept of microfinance, which is giving small loans to the poorest people in the world to lift them up out of poverty. Ended up going to Uganda between my sophomore and junior year and was exposed to an orphanage where 160 kids were living in just the worst conditions you could possibly imagine, like sleeping on rocky dirt floors, hungry. Girls were selling themselves to survive. Boys were running to the market to steal food. Just a really dark, hopeless place. And uncovered a lot of corruption and misuse of resources over the summer. So made the decision that I was going to stay in Uganda. I was there with a friend and my sister who came back to Colorado and started sharing the story about these kids. And I said, I'm going to stay and I'm going to try to rescue them. Around that time, I met Haril. He was a young entrepreneur living across the street from me and saw what I was trying to do and probably saw how clueless I was. And a long story short, we were able to rescue 80 kids from that orphanage and bring them to what we called Musana Children's Home. So at 20, we both had just turned 21 years old and literally got legal guardianship over 80 kids.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was how Musana started. Um, so, what's interesting is I was very obviously naive, didn't understand the culture, how things work, why kids end up in orphanages, and really thought that these kids had no one, right? That they had no parents, no guardians. And Haril, his story is so powerful, but he's like, no, these kids come from someplace. We have a communal culture. We take care of our own. We need to find out where they came from. And so we literally found all 80 of their villages and discovered that they had parents and relatives that should have been taking care of them. And so this big question came up, right? Why are there orphanages? 80% of kids in orphanages are not orphans.
Right.
And how has our well-intentioned charity negatively contributed to some of this dependency mentality in communities like Uganda where we were? And so, yeah, just started to learn a lot and completely closed the children's home, reconnected kids to their families, and totally changed our approach, which we can tell you more about. But that was how Musana started, and that's why it gets attention. It's a crazy story. I'll never forget the first few days of being responsible for all these kids and having no clue what to do, right? Had to feed them, had to educate them, how to provide for them, and all the learning and lessons that happened along the way.
It's probably good that you were clueless because if you knew, you probably wouldn't have done it. Don't you think? Like if you had known, I mean, I think there's a gift to not knowing, um, just receiving whatever comes.
Yeah, I mean, and I think back, like I always say this, like we have a girl that has grown up in our home. She's 20 years old. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we were your age. Like, so, and I'm like, I mean, I do. I'm like, how were we so brave? Like, I
hmm
wish I still had that bravery. I mean, I was getting like death threats. And I mean, there were a lot of people benefiting from keeping the kids living in those conditions. And here I am, like, coming in and exposing it all. And so it was, risky. And people didn't want me there and they made it really clear. But I was like just, really brave and I look back like
You
I was
didn't have
like,
the prefrontal cortex yet. It really, didn't even occur to you. I mean, I'm probably true. Like it, I mean, I think it's really interesting because I do think I have a 20-year-old and I do think there's a specific time in your life where you're like, consequences, what? And that can work for you or not, but how you were, to be so brave as to do this because you're really upsetting a whole system. Because what I heard you say was that people were benefiting, right, financially from keeping kids, like they were probably siphoning money or misdirecting funds or things like that.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
we call it a tourist attraction, right? It was the place that they would bring all the foreigners that came into town and say, oh, look at how our kids are living. And it was a kind of place you could not walk away without doing anything. I mean, it it was so bad. And so people would go home, raise money, send it, and never reach the kids.
So was that the point of then these trips was to then get people who came there to give them money, but then you're going to be Mr. It's sort of a scam, right? Like that's a con. The
Yeah,
money's not going to the kids.
yeah, and unfortunately, it's everywhere. And these kids were taken from their families, to yeah. So, and it's very common. It's not just this one time case. So it's
It's interesting because as you were speaking, like my kids are adopted out of foster care in the US. Now they are in their late teens and early 20s, so this was many years ago. In fact, like in our foster system, I mean it's the same, but it's different because it was looking at like the organization that I work with, the Foster Adoptive Care Coalition, like they've made it their mission to reconnect kids to kin because most kids were connected to somebody, but over the time in the system, they either lost touch and it's hard to imagine, like even in the United States, like kids would not, and then they actually have private detectives that go and research and find kin, like aunts, uncles, cousins, like and who will say, "Hey, yeah, I'll, I had no idea. I'll, yeah," and then they so that they're able to they keep the kids, and now the last resort is, adoption out of I can't remember the name. Like I adopted my kids, which was so commonplace then. Like that was like the default. Instead of like, hey, wait, every kid's connected to somebody, you know.
And my favorite part of Ugandan culture is how communal it is. I mean, they just
Mm,
take care of each other. They have extended families. They don't have the traditional nuclear family. Like almost everyone we know in Uganda has kids in their home that aren't their biological kids. And it's so beautiful. And then we come in with our Western ideas of institutionalizing them, and it's broken, right? So we need to
right. And every family for themselves, like I have this thing. Now you're gonna hear my thing, but I have a thing. It's like lawnmowers. Like why does everybody need a lawnmower? Right? I have a city yard. It takes 10 seconds to mow my grass. Like there could be 100 people could probably share this lawnmower, but that's just not how our culture works, right? Our culture is every home functions independently, which puts a lot of pressure, but that keeps us, buying and working. I'm gonna stop there because this is about you. So, Haril, tell me, like, what was it like for you being 20 years old and having 80 kids?
Yeah, Andrea says the man because the kids used to call me the man when it just started. I mean, it was mind-blowing. It was a very difficult situation. Being introduced to this orphanage and seeing these children was one of those things, those moments you're like, how is this really happening just within the communities you live in? Like, unbelievable situation. And the worst part of it is to learn that it was corrupt and there were very influential people in the community that knew about it,
Mm,
left this place to continue in this kind of way because there was so much corruption into it. And it was a big threat, actually, when Andrea mentioned staying to fight for the kids. Um, I was, put on a place where, like, okay, there is fighting for the kids, but also protecting Andrea as well, and, into that whole situation. So at the end of the day, it was all God's planning. He used us in the best ways he could, and wisdom in particular to navigate the situation and to find the relatives of these kids, find all the lies, get the kids out of the deceit and the lie. And again, as you talk about orphanages and adoptions, and these are not concepts really that are culture in our concept there.
hmm
These are all Western broad concept. An orphanage is started by the Church Missionary Society, not realistically as a culture thing that we came up and say they're orphanages. Adoption and, these are all Western terms. There, a community becomes a family. And
mm,
child, a parent dies and there is a child, a community will take up that child as their own child. Someone will be taking care. So what they lack really is resources and ability to be able to provide the essential needs. And this lack of providing these essential needs has led people to desperate situations where they end up into situations where their kids are in institutes. They are built up on a lie because they believe if a donor hears this is an orphan, their heart is going to be touched, and they're going to release donations and funding and gifts and things like that. But really, it's because it's the poverty levels. It's not that these kids cannot be anywhere. They don't have a place they could stay. And realizing that that wisdom coming in the beginning of Musana, we came up with a very different purpose of how we want to do this going forward. And that's one of the things to navigate, again, to get out of the mindset of the community that no, you don't have to lie, you don't have to do this to get any outside support or to support your kids, and to see that this is the only hope and way. And we saw the outcomes of that, the problems that attached to that kind of model. So it was a very hard beginning time. And of course, like Andrea was mentioning, being clueless, she was also learning so many things. This is where compassion and reality fight each other. You
Mm-hmm.
coming in with all this compassion to help these kids and learning, okay, the reality on the ground is actually different. So you find that there was a lot of learning in that space. So we struggled with the beginning in a way,
And
but
when did you start the organization?
in 2008, so this is
Okay.
almost 17 years ago
Okay.
when we started. And it has just been a wonderful journey since we changed the whole model of how we want to really impact the community and change the
Yeah,
situation.
and that's what I want to talk about because what I'm hearing from your story is that it wasn't a lack of love, concern, or caring, it's a lack of resources, right? And the lack of resources cause people to have to really make some tough decisions because the way they were taught is, oh, you have to like get these donations. Like so now you have a model which I find really fascinating, um, which is that your donors, how people invest in your organization is they give to infrastructure, not to the actual community. Because and this is in what I'm reading from you is because you want the people to create their own right community. You're just providing the infrastructure resources so they can build it up themselves because like the sponsorship or that thing then is that really benefiting somebody if it's keeping them in this cycle. And I just want to hear like what your thoughts are, if I said that right.
No, you're absolutely right. We have really looked in a different way of how we can break the cycle of dependence on outside aid by investing in the community through infrastructure and through building what is essential in the community that can actually transform like long-term impact. And we thought and looked at everything we could do, and we looked at areas of education, health, and economic empowerment programs in a way of how we can transform this community to be fully self-reliant and build long-lasting change. And this is something that has worked well, where we have actually worked so hard to bring the local ownership piece into the community. And this is one of the ways that I would love for people to understand and learn that ideas of how to change a community can actually come from the community themselves, not really our own ideas. Even for us, even when we go to a community, first of all, is to listen to those people in those community. What are their ideas for change in some of the pressing situations they are going through, and analyzing that and forging a solution together. And that's one of the ways we walk that journey in terms of changing these communities. And the impact has been amazing for the last 16 years that we've done this, because we've been able to build 8 schools in these communities, over almost 9,000 students that have been educated through these schools. You know,
Wow.
when we see, and these are sustainable schools. These are schools whereby they raise their own operational cost, to feed the kids, to clothe the kids, to provide, medical care and everything, the staffing and, so a lot of things. And the health part, where we build hospitals in these communities, where we created, people to access immediate health care within their own communities. Now we see people not running out of their communities to find healthcare services. They are readily available and high quality, and they are, sustaining them by themselves. Over 300,000 patient visits have been seen in these hospitals. Skilling. People need skill, most especially people in impoverished areas where they are like really poor. One of the big thing that will come at you, I need a skill. I need a vocational trade skill. Sometimes I don't see going for formal education is something that is going to help me right now. But if I have a vocational skill, I know I can immediately provide for my families. And we have seen impact there through empowering women and men in construction training, electrical training, plumbing training, becoming designers and producing soap and so many different other things. They're doing crafts, and they're marketing them locally, they're marketing them outside their community, and they're earning a living. And we're seeing families reunited
Oh,
self-sustaining. And this is, Mariana, what is most important. The pride and dignity and value
yeah.
with this transformation of which they have done themselves, you cannot beat it by giving a handout. Because a handout can only keep them in that place of vulnerability, of knowing I'm incapable, I'm worth nothing, but rather to be given a handout. And that's not how we want to see these communities look like.
Yeah. Have you ever read the book The Soul of Money? Do you? Oh,
No.
okay. This is your homework.
Right, I'm writing it down.
Write this up. Everybody who's listening, read The Soul of Money. Okay, so let me explain this. I'm gonna share a story from this book because you're gonna love this. The woman's name is Lynn Twist. Now, it's a book about our relationship to money and how we can reframe our relationship to money as something like because we and it's a really, really beautiful book. And what makes it even more meaningful is that she was a fundraiser for the Hunger Relief Project. And she went all over the world. And so she went to places like yours and met people with nothing and then sat at very wealthy celebrities, dinner tables. And the the juxtaposition of all of this wealth, right, really changed her and helped her create a whole new identity with money. But she talks about in the book a story of, she calls it the Magnificent Seven, and I can't remember where it was, but I can tell you what happened. They, these men were going to leave their villages to go into the city to work, and they went to this seminar like about like asset developing your own assets. And the seven of them decided to pool some money and buy some farming tools, and they started farming and they started growing crops, and then those crops became jellies, and then they started marketing that, right? And through the time they actually built up a whole thriving village. The whole thing is they had nothing, like they thought they had nothing, right? We have nothing to offer, right? Like we have nothing, so we're going to go over to this place so that we can make, because they have something we could have. It was actually all right there, right? They just needed a little bit of training and guidance and a little bit of money to get it started. And that was the whole point, is that everyone has assets. Everyone has assets to give. And it's about igniting those assets. And she goes into a lot and talk about different stories about how things went right or wrong based on how much they listened to, like how well they let the community lead. And the new model of fundraising is to trust the people, right? And trust their vision for what they want and invest in that instead of us coming in, which was the old model, and say, oh, we're going to save you. Here's all this stuff. Like, and she goes into a lot of about USA for Africa and all, and then Ethiopia, because I'm a child of the 80s, right? I went to college in the 80s, and like that was really big, and how it was just it only created more dependence because nothing of that millions of dollars that went into Ethiopia was actually sustainable, right? And so she talks a lot about that. You're going to love this book. And everybody has to read the book that's listening, because it changed my whole relationship with money, and it also helped me understand like how there's assets all around you, right? It's just a matter of activating them. And sometimes the charity that we think is doing such a good job is actually perpetuating the very problem that we want to end. And the way I see forward, I told you I was going to talk about this stuff. The way I see forward is like, what is your exit strategy? Like, sooner or later, I want you to go out of business. You know what I mean? Like, because you're solving a problem instead. I'm gonna say this and then I'm gonna let you talk again. I love animal rescue. I foster dogs, and an agency I've known since infancy, since it started, is now a huge agency, and they're building this huge shelter. There's always going to be another dog, right? So no matter, they're going to build a huge, and they're going to fill it, right? And then there'll be, and so what can stop the flow of neglected animals, right? So what can and so what I see you doing is what can create this so that everyone can take care of themselves, so we don't have this problem anymore. Like that,
Yeah.
I mean, eventually, right? Is it not your goal to eventually not have this like you're like, okay, we're done. Let's go find somebody else.
Yeah, and to talk about that, we're already doing that. So one of the things actually after 10 years of building Musana in 2018, one of the things that happened is that what we had built in this one community, Iganga, was all fully self-sustaining and doing well. And our next step was now to replicate the model in other communities that need a similar model.
Right.
So one of the big things I and Andrea really work on is to see how we can build these models in other communities. And we work with the people in the community. They come in to lead and run the operation and sustain, and really just come in a way of supporting them with any support that they need. And that's one of the things that we do on a daily basis. So far we are in 3 communities, and next year we are going to be in 5 communities that Musana is existing. And this is where we are building elementary school, like high school, women's school. They do production units and hospital and a hotel and restaurant in this community.
Wow.
And right now we have over 700 full-time employees that work for the organization. And
700.
yeah,
Wow.
and these are full time, but because we are also in construction all the time, we are employing 200, 500 people at a time that are working on construction site. And this is how deep the impact goes into the community. I mean, these are Ugandans that are working there. Right now, we're talking about going to different countries and replicating such models. And sustainable. They don't need any dollar amount to run the operations that are going on there, unless when we're building something new or investing in something that they really need. So,
Like so sort of infrastructure, capital project, something like that, right? The
yes,
building or the right, but the day-to-day, the maintenance, the salaries, all of that, they are generating that income themselves. So you're saying it is sustainable.
And not just even sustainable, they're actually
profitable.
profiting. And those profits are providing scholarships for the most vulnerable kids in the community, free healthcare for people that can't even afford our affordable healthcare, right? I mean, they're actually supporting their own people. And I think like that's what we want, right? At the end of the day, is these communities
Yes.
not just be sustainable, but to be thriving economically and
Yeah.
supporting people. And like our right now, like you talk about big picture, like we want the charity sector to change, right? We want, like, what if we were to use philanthropic dollars to invest in enterprise, invest in things that communities need to truly thrive, not continuously be dependent on us, right? You donate a meal and it lasts a day, right?
Mhm.
We're treating symptoms instead of addressing the causes. And if we were to use philanthropic dollars to invest in long-term solutions, right? I mean, in Africa alone, over the last 30 years, there's been $1.2 trillion of aid, right? It's not that like the world is turning a blind eye and not helping, right? There is a lot of resources going into Africa. And then you mix that with all the resources that are already in Africa. There's no reason why Africa shouldn't be this thriving continent, right? And we just have to change our approach, right? We need to stop seeing the people as charity cases and instead see them for the potential, right? And the opportunity that is in Africa. I mean, by 2050, is it 25% of the world's workforce will be in Africa? Is that the right statistic?
Yeah.
So it's like Africa's young and it's energetic and there's so much potential. So why right now by 2030, 80% of the world's poor will be in Africa? Why?
Right. Right.
Right? And we just have to shift our thinking. And we're trying to do a lot more speaking about our model, trying to get organizations to get excited about transitioning from where are we, what are our charitable dollars being used for? How can we make sure that we're investing in sustainable solutions?
This is such an important conversation to have, in for Uganda, for Africa, but also for the US, because I think that's the same thing. Like when you say, oh, we'll give us $25 and we can provide, a a meal, this many meals or whatever. I think that kind of, because I'm a messaging marketing person, right? That reinforces this this idea that it's just reactive, and it's also a quick payoff. And we trained donors because I know you raise money right in the U.S. for the infrastructure, and I want to talk about that in a second. Like when it's a different approach to donors, it's a longer term, it's a higher level of trust. It's not that quick payoff, but we've trained people right to want this quick win, right? The donors. So it's creating that next level of relationship, which is not about reactive, hey, problem solution. It's like together we're going to, you can, here is the vision and you can support it. And it's a longer term, right? And it's less tangible. And I think it's to the donor, I mean, say, right? And when we say things like, oh, give us, or this sponsor a child, or those things like that, that we're reinforcing that quick payoff, which I think in the long run has done a lot of damage and has trained donors to expect this, when really what you need is like any like my husband runs a biotech startup. Okay, somebody gave him $6 million. Okay, and he really has, and for about 5 years to try, and it's plants, I don't know, whatever. I can't tell you, but he gets 5 years to make something happen. If it happens, great. If not, that's okay. They know, right, that they're putting money into something that might work. Whereas in donors here, like we want to see a payoff and we want to see it now, or we feel, but that's what we told them to expect, right? And so I
Right.
see it more like investing in like a biotech where, hey, yeah. And my husband's the scientist. He gets to decide he's got about 20 people that work for them. He gets to decide what the science is. He reports back to the investors, but they're not in the lab next to him telling him what to do. They have the money, he's got the expertise, in the same sense as, yes, we have resources, but their communities, they have the expertise, right? They have the lived experience. And in a sense of like, but the old model is, oh, let's come over and you poor little things, let me teach you how to do it. Pat, pat, pat on the head.
I mean, and I
Woo,
mean,
you guys are firing me up today. You're like the most mellow people, and I'm like, oh.
I mean, and I was like, I was that example of the person that went to Uganda and thought that I was going to solve all the problems. Like, and probably the biggest lesson I've learned over the last 17 years is how like the most like important thing that I can do is step back,
Yep.
right? And invest in these incredible Ugandan leaders. I mean, the team working every day on the ground, they're the smartest, most innovative, like hardworking, driven people, I think, on the planet, right? And they face like so many more challenges than we have to face here. And they're doing it like, I mean, they're just killing it. And I'm like, we need to be investing in them, right? They're going to change their own communities. I mean, Haril, like the leader that he is, I'm like the story you just gave to your husband about your husband, or it's like, we need to like invest in the people that know how to end poverty. And those are the people within their communities.
Right. They know how to do it. They just need some resources. And the word that came through for me was trust. Like when you step back, that means trust. And right. And the basis of any relationship is trust. I want to talk about two things really quick. One is are you raising money in the US then? Because you're in Denver, are you based in Denver, and you go back and forth, or do you live in Uganda? And how do you raise money in the US?
So our home is in Uganda. So we're like when we're in we spend time in the US. We live with my parents, so we're not like, invested in Colorado. So we say our home is in Uganda, but we do raise money here. It's a big part of our job because we want to expand Musana into more communities and see more lives transformed. We want to see this model in more communities, and yeah, because it's possible, right? Like creating self-reliant sustainable communities is possible. And that's what we're encouraged
Yeah,
by.
and one thing that I want to add on, mostly on your point that you touched on, what we are raising money for compared to what other nonprofits are raising money for, is such something that is worth having a conversation about. Development takes a long view and a deeper, long-lasting impact in a community than just, raising money for programs whereby you're just slightly touching people's lives. And you're once you're out of that place, really you look back and say, what impact have I made? And we are seeing it already, like just by the pooling of funding from the US government, the USID, it has impacted so many people who have been reliant on that funding for a long time. I would say even from the country I come from in Uganda, like these are some of the projects that have been funded for over 30, 40 years, and yet you see the pullout is causing some significant impact and damage. So when we go and say we are going to do real development, empower communities to be self-reliant, this is a long-term view. It takes a lot of effort, takes a lot of sacrifice, takes a lot of resources, it takes a lot of heart. And you talk about trust, but I would say, okay, over $1.2 trillion has been poured in Africa. Why are people still poor today? Are more poor today than they were even before. So, is it an issue of trust? Is it an issue of methodology, approaches that have been used? And how can we really change that?
Yeah.
And I agree, there are things that can be trained. There are things you can need experts to come in and train. But there are things when it comes to social change, whereby it is really built from the ground up, uh,
Mhm.
from the communities themselves. And, they take skin in the game and, in terms of that change. Because whenever there is no skin in the game, that's why you see there is lack of ownership into anything that is being developed and anything that is being done. And this is one of the things that we want to see, that there is a change in mindset from the donors or funders and also the recipients, the beneficiaries. There
Yeah.
is a big change of mindset on both sides to see that we can do some meaningful and long-lasting impact.
It's like a partnership. It feels like a partnership instead, right? Instead of like somebody giving to you, right? This is a mutual. I just when as you were talking, I could see like as a donor, I would feel like I'm a partner in this, like we all have our roles to play, right?
Yeah.
We all have a seat at the table, and and I just think that's a different way of looking at it, and then the kind of the traditional fundraising of, hey, come here and help save these people, rather than come here and invest in and then
Mhm.
watch it grow. Because I don't know if you've ever measured your impact, like economic impact, but it must be in the billions of dollars. Like it just has to be. If you have all of that, it has to be in the billions of dollars, the economic impact you created. So if you're
Yeah,
coming
most
to me and
definitely.
saying, hey, give me $1,000, I'll turn it into $1 billion, I'd be like, heck yeah. You want me to
Yes.
write your copy for you? No, I did a podcast last week, and the guy was talking about how you can talk about your economic impact. It's like if you help 100 kids and you to be entrepreneurs, and two of them actually start businesses, you think, oh, that's 2%. But what if those two per and they create $1 million businesses that have $40 million impact, right? Like we want to look at the impact that all of this is having, because that's what I'm investing in ultimately, is that outcome. Okay, now I want to ask one little thing, because somewhere along this journey, you became two became one. And so how did that happen? You're like, why don't we just spend all our time together?
Uh,
It happened because of her, so she can explain better.
Whatever. No, I mean the truth is we worked together for 4 years. Like we were partners. We, first had all this responsibility of the kids, and then Musana started growing, and we were leading this organization together. And we have a cross-cultural marriage, obviously, a lot of differences culturally. And so, we say it's God's timing, because if we had like started a relationship right from the get-go when we met, I think it would have failed like immediately, because there was so much learning we had to do. So, along the way, we joke that no one would want the baggage that we carried. We had a lot of responsibility at a really young age. Who was gonna want all to, yeah, be partners with either of us. But we really, I mean, it's such a, it's beautiful to have a marriage that, we have the same passion and the same
Yeah.
love for Uganda and Musana and our family. We have young kids that are growing up a part of it. And yeah, it has its
So,
challenges.
and you have young kids?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we have
Yeah.
a 10, an almost 7, and a 1-year-old.
Wow.
It
Okay.
has been a very big blessing and a very beautiful journey. I don't know if I would be okay with any other person besides Andrea because, and she knows me so well. Every time we talk about relationship, she was like, "There is no way you would have been with any other person." So
Uniquely designed
yeah.
for each other.
Exactly. And it has been really wonderful. And we have learned a lot just as, people that work together and from a different culture and travel a lot and and have a very big responsibility. So there's been a lot of learnings. And of course, with now almost uh, 11 years,
12.
12 years in marriage, it has been um, one of the things that we have a testimony to give
Yeah.
to people in relationship because we have been, we have had our wonderful times, the fuzzy times, and then we have been in the trenches as well in hard times, and we have come out really strongly together, which is something so amazing. And our beautiful kids, just raising them, navigating life between Africa and Europe and, US, it's been something really amazing so far.
Yeah. Okay, one quick question, and then we're gonna wrap up this. This may be a two-parter, because, but this has been so fascinating, and I really love your whole story, and I know everyone is loving listening to this. Those 80 kids, are you in touch with any of them, all of them?
Yeah, majority of them were in touch with them. Like she actually
Do any of
mentioned.
them work for you, work now for Musana? Yeah.
Yeah, some of them, we call each other, hey bro, and hey fellas.
Co-workers.
Yeah, co-workers. It's crazy. Some of them look, it's amazing. They used to call us old the man and so on, and right now some of them are really big and like you can't tell who is old and who is young. So,
That is incredible.
I
so
mean, like almost every enterprise you go to, whether you go into one of our schools or one of our hospitals, our hotels, you find our original kids, and they're all working, and they're amazing, and they're changing their communities. And that is, yeah, it's like our
That
favorite thing about what we do is seeing, yeah, the lives changed at the end of the day.
that must, I mean, there has to be such a cup filler to be able to like walk into a hotel or hospital and be like, yeah, it's
Yeah.
working. And driving that sense of driving that you forward to do more. Okay, I always end with the last question. So I know you're in Denver sometimes. I'm in St. Louis, just a quick plane ride. So if we ever wind up in a karaoke bar together, what is your go-to song? Will it be a duet? I'm wondering.
Oh my gosh. Oh.
Uh, I don't think we are that. I won't speak for her, but I don't think I'm really that kind of a person. I just want to have a good time with great people.
That is a good time with great people to me. It's my favorite thing. No,
You
it's
know,
okay. But if you don't have a go-to song, I get it. I'll just sing for you. I don't know. Andrew, you got a go-to song?
Well, we have a joke because there's a really popular song in Uganda that is the lyrics are "You are the salt in my soup." So when I thought about that, I'm like, okay, duet, that would be a really funny one to do.
Yes.
Oh,
That's wonderful. I am so glad to know you and meet you and know your story. I feel really privileged. I hope I get to see this documentary one day as it gets released around the States. I thank you for doing what you do and being on here and just sharing your story and sharing your words of inspiration and also like giving us a new perspective on how philanthropy can really operate, here And there. Okay, anything else you want people to know real quick before we wrap up?
I don't think so. If they
Okay.
want to learn more, you can visit our website and follow us on.
Musana.org. And you guys, looks like you guys are on Instagram, and we'll put your social media, all your links and stuff out. It will go in the show notes. So if people want to get in touch with you or follow you, they can do that. I'm sure you have amazing pictures. I would hope so. Thank you so much. And that is it for me and my guests in this episode of The Influential Nonprofit. As always, if you want to connect with me to learn how to grow communities of support, so no matter what's happening in the world around you, hint, hint, you can thrive in any circumstance, let me know. We can chat about it. My connecting with me is always in the show notes, and we'll see you next time.
Mm.